would be tenant those houses.
Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and I want to pick up where Moana Maki left off and talk a little bit about some state houses in my electorate that this national government came into office and when they completely destroyed the community at Pomari. So they came into office and they decided that there was antisocial behaviour at Pomari, so they threw everyone out. They then closed up those houses. They boarded them all up. And then once they'd been boarded up, of course, they got vandalised because they were left empty. Once they'd been vandalised, what did they do? Well, they demolished them. Did they then rebuild any new houses on that empty land? No, they didn't. They said, oh, we haven't got any money to build any new houses on this land. We're quite happy to demolish the houses that were there. And then they went ahead and demolished the houses. The land now sits empty and now they're trying to hock it off. Now they're trying to hock it off. And you know, I am watching that repeating now all throughout the Hutt Valley. Because all throughout the Hutt Valley we have boarded up state houses where they've used the excuse of earthquake risk to board up a whole lot of state houses, in many cases where the risk is only a very minor one. It might be that they need to have a chimney that needs to be rebuilt or some minor piece of capital works that needs to be done in order to make that house tenantable. And what they've done instead is board the whole thing up. Of course, those houses will be vandalised because if you leave a whole lot of empty houses boarded up, they will be vandalised. And then they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, gosh, these houses are now no longer habitable, we're going to demolish them. They'll then turn around and say, we've got this empty land, but we haven't got any money to build any new houses on it, so we better hock that off as well. And then, of course, we're going to find ourselves in the position that we were in at the end of the 1990s, where the national government have been in power for 6 years, and suddenly the state housing, the number of state houses we have in New Zealand has dramatically declined because they are quite happy to board them up, to demolish them and to hock off the land, but they're not prepared to actually invest in building more state houses, which is what we actually need in New Zealand. I am very, very proud of the moves that the Labour Party has been making under the leadership of David Shearer to actually deal with many of the big housing challenges that we have in this country. We have a major problem with housing affordability. People desperately want to get onto the home ownership ladder and they can't. And David Shearer and the Labour Party absolutely recognise that, and we are absolutely committed to doing something about it. We will build 10,000 affordable houses every year over 10 years. That is going to make an enormous difference for all of those New Zealand families who will get into home ownership, mostly for the first time. That will be huge. It means that the dream of home ownership isn't just for those who come from means or who have high-paying jobs. It is for everyday New Zealanders who go out there, work hard and want to be able to buy their first home. We think that that is a dream that every New Zealander should be able to realise, and so we will build 100,000 new affordable houses over 10 years to make sure that New Zealanders can actually achieve that dream. David Shearer has announced over the weekend that we will also restrict the purchase of New Zealand houses, existing New Zealand houses, by overseas speculators. The hysteria that we have heard from the national government about this, from the same national government that of course brought us the legislation about boat people and all of the other draconian things that they've been doing in the immigration area, suddenly have this mass concern about, suddenly they're hugely concerned about overseas speculators being able to buy New Zealand houses. Overseas speculators are not the people that want to move here and buy a house and create a life here. They're not going to be covered by that policy, because if they're coming to New Zealand, they're going to be resident in New Zealand, they'll be able to buy a house in New Zealand. No one is saying that they won't be able to. What we're saying is that people living overseas who have no interest in living here, no interest in contributing to the New Zealand economy and New Zealand society, should not be able to make massive profits by buying up the available houses, pushing them out of reach of New Zealand families who want to buy them, charging them rent and then expatriating the profits from doing so offshore. That's fundamentally wrong. And what we're saying is we acknowledge that, and so we're going to place some sensible restrictions on who can buy existing houses. If overseas people want to invest in the property market in New Zealand, they can build more houses. They can build more houses, and that will leave New Zealand better off because it will increase the number of houses that we have. And we have a housing shortage in New Zealand. That is something that this government aren't willing to acknowledge. In my electorate, in the Hutt Valley area, we have waiting lists of people trying to get into state housing. We have so many families jammed into houses because they cannot afford to buy their own house. We have a housing supply problem in New Zealand. The National Party keep turning away from it. The National Party are quite happy to pick holes in every solution that is being offered by the Labour Party, and they can't come up with any themselves. They're going to commission another report. They're going to have another inquiry. It's time for some solutions.
The question is that vote housing stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary no, the ayes have it. The question now is that vote communications stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary no, the ayes have it. The question now is that vote environment stand part of the schedules. Nikki Wagner.
Mr. Speaker.